Capobianco has served as a political strategist to several political leaders and has run as a candidate himself. John, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be here, Marcel. Thank you for asking.
So the Ontario PC Party, after 9 months, has had its annual general meeting just in Ottawa recently. Tell me a little bit about how that went.
Well, you know what, I got to say, I was a delegate at the convention. I've been a delegate at almost every convention since I was 18 years old. So, and this one here had a sort of feel of excitement, of renewal. And I think every new leader that gets elected and selected by the party members, I think their first convention is always a big one. It's a lot of you know bent up excitement and enthusiasm. And I think Patrick handled it well. It was a really good convention. There was a lot of delegates. We had a lot of people that were there as observers. But more importantly, I think that convention served for Patrick as a way to put his stamp on the party. And that's what we saw.
So are we seeing a new progressive conservative party?
Well, the provincial party kept the name Progressive Conservative for that reason. I think they wanted to remain progressive and conservative. It was all in name in the last number of years. And I guess every leader has their opportunity to kind of rebrand and remake the party, as we saw with Patrick this coming election. He, I thought, did a great job and sort of with the new logo and the new messaging, and we had a new executive elected. So it was a lot of refresh and renewal, I think, that came out of this convention. And a lot of people, me included, and I've been a long-time conservative, found it to be actually quite enthusiastic and quite nice. It was a good convention.
Now, when Patrick Brown was an MP under Stephen Harper, that was a real conservative government. And now it seems like he's cast aside his past affiliation, an irony that it happened to be in Ottawa, with the federal Conservative Party, and he's now tacking to a more progressive. For example, he's open to carbon pricing, which was absolutely verboten during the Harper regime.
Well, I think Patrick's making the transition from being a backbench MP in a government that was led by Stephen Harper to now being a leader of a provincial party. And there's a lot of differences, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a huge amount of differences. And one now is that he actually can make and develop policies, whereas when he was a backbencher in the Stephen Harper government, he literally had to, abide by what was happening at the cabinet level and at the PMO. But now what you're seeing is Patrick taking his experiences as an MP and actually developing his own leadership style and his own way of being able to bring policies together that he feels is what Ontario needs. Because remember, as an MP from Barrie in Ottawa, he represents not only Barrie, but he represents interests across Canada. Here, he's specifically looking at interests of Ontarians, and he sees the environment as a significant issue in Ontario.
Well, that's interesting to note, but the fact is that he really hasn't come out with any policies. Even at the Ottawa speech, where a lot of people were hoping he'd talk about policy, it was very light. In fact, some people have said that he's, it's Conservative Party light.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you've seen, and he's only been a leader now for just over a year, and in that year he's done a lot. He's got himself elected sooner than most pundits and most media thought he would. He got himself elected as an MPP.
In a very safe seat, albeit.
But nonetheless, nothing's really safe these days, as you know, Marcel. But nonetheless, he did, and he was able to do that in a very smooth fashion. But he got himself elected, and he had a by-election where the person that got elected, Lauren Coe, won the popular vote more so than a very popular Christine Elliott did before him. So he's done a lot of good things, and he's also come up with some very strong policies. He's obviously going against the hydro sale, and at the convention he actually unveiled a very comprehensive policy development process, because one of the things that Patrick wants to do is he wants to develop policies from the ground up and not from the top down, and I think that's refreshing.
But that's exactly what Tim Hudak said many conventions ago. I remember watching that, and Hudak made a big deal about having grassroots participation and policy development from the bottom up. And then what happened during the election? It was all top down.
Well, and I think a lot of party members learned from their mistakes. And I know that Patrick, who was on the sidelines as an MP watching it, but he ran
he was standing right beside Tim Hudak when he announced the 100,000 staff cut that he proposed?
Well, because Tim was in his writing actually suggesting it. So, of course, as a loyal conservative person, Patrick was there to do that. But what's important, though, is now that he's leader, now that he's been elected leader, now that he's actually putting a stamp on his party, Marcel, the key thing now is that he's developing his own way of doing things that is actually very much involves the party. And if you were at the convention, as I was, we saw a really comprehensive policy development process that really is a grassroots up movement that he wants to be able to engage in the next year to 2 to 3 years. And I think what you'll see come election in 2018 is a policy document or an election document that will be driven by the policies created by party members. I think that's a big change, and that's going to be refreshing.
Let me talk to you about the grassroots, about your membership. They tend to be a little more conservative than the leader or the party. In fact, I would say that they somewhat mirror what's happening in the Republican Party. You know, the Republican Party is tending to tack violently to the right with Cruz and Trump and to some extent Rubio. They're going to the right. Is the grassroots going to tack to the right to mirror what's happening in the States?
Well, I think it's a challenge with sort of all political parties, really, and I think ours is no different. I think when you've got various, segments or factions of conservatives, and as well as the Liberals do, and even more so the NDP have their factions of left-leaning members. We're no different, and I think the key for any successful leader, as we've seen over the course of years, is to be able to sort of come in there with a strong sense of where he or she wants to see the province go and how they think the party needs to get there to actually win the election. And I think what Patrick has done is he is looking at all various issues and the policies. He wants the party membership and others to come up with the policy, and he'll determine with others and his caucus the best way forward. But I think that he's actually tapping into every section of the conservative membership in a very successful way, because he won. And I can tell you, because I worked for his opponent, but I could tell you, as a big supporter of Patrick now and always have been of the party, he's doing a great job tapping into all of those segments of conservatives. And will he disappoint some? Sure, every leader does in some cases, but what is more important is if you listen to your membership and if you want to believe that they've got the right answers, then you will always get them on side. And Patrick is certainly on the right path in that regard.
So your party is in debt over $5 million. How are you going to get out of that hole?
Well, this coming weekend, this weekend pass was a good way of being able to do that. I think our donors and people who wish the Conservative Party to succeed are seeing a strong, principled leader in Patrick Brown. They're seeing the caucus rallying behind him. They're seeing, over 2,000 members of the party show up at a convention in Ottawa, enthusiastically supporting our leader. Those are all signs that are going to help us with fundraising. And I think, Patrick is well aware. He's always been a strong fundraiser, but he's also reaching out to other untraditional members of the Conservative Party to bring them in and get money as well. So I think you'll see that we'll be in financially good shape. But after every election, as you know, Marcel, parties are always in debt. And it's a question of how quickly you can get yourself out of debt. And Patrick is well aware, as we all are, and we as party members and supporters will do our part to help raise the money. But
now, there's some controversy in one of these fundraising efforts where you're actually selling access in the members' lounge at Queen's Park.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I read something about the Liberal Party and some firm is hosting a $6,000 dinner with ministers.
But they're not using the People's Place, the legislature, to do their fundraising.
Right.
They're doing it at a private hotel where they've paid for that. You're proposing allowing people who pay $5,000 over 3 years access into the members' lounge.
Well, I think Queen's Park, if I'm not mistaken, is access open to all the public, quite frankly.
But not at a price. You're putting a price on it.
But it's also a choice. It's a choice if somebody wants to go.
What's the choice? The choice is if you pay up, you can get into the members' lounge.
But it's
not normally accessible to the public.
But it's no different, I think, Marcel, than any other political party that charges an exorbitant amount of money to have access to a minister or to a
your party's done it under the Harris days,
but we're in opposition, though. So the good news is that
I know that I'll be at one of your fundraisers tomorrow night.
One of my personal fundraisers.
Well, not yours, but one of your party members.
No, but I do think, though, to your point, though, I think it's an important aspect, and I'm in the government relations business. I think it's an important aspect to know that, there's always open and transparent access. I think that's the key thing to any of these things. So even
not arguing with that, but I think that having a fundraising by using the legislature, that really crosses the line. It's not even close to the line. I think it's well past the line.
I think. Well, Marcel, and I think that's an opinion that you certainly have, and it's your right to have. But I also think that it isn't any different than any other party who has a 500 or 1,000 or a 6,000 in the case of the Liberal government. And I think it's actually more telling when they're actually having a fundraiser with a minister or the premier who are in the decision-making process versus an opposition leader who people just want to get to know and want to get to meet. So, but I'm not against fundraising, either from a Liberal perspective or NDP perspective. I think it's part of the public policy process. So I think it's all in the same kind of milieu. But at the end of the day, people have a choice to buy a ticket to go visit somebody and see somebody, and no one's going to be influenced by by somebody who's going to buy a ticket.
Somebody who's giving $5,000 and getting access to the West Lobby, I think that's something that's, the East Lobby is something that's a lot different.
It will be the West Lobby in 2018, Marcel.
Possibly. We'll wait to see. But let me ask you another area of concern is about Patrick had the least number of caucus members supporting him. And now we see that there's a fight between two caucus members in redistribution and a seat in the Ottawa area between Jack McLaren and Lisa MacLeod, and it's not proving to go away, and it's a source of bitterness among those supporters of each particular MPP.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something that whenever redistribution happens, we see time and time again at the federal level, at the provincial level. Federally, when we went through redistribution, a lot of incumbents were unfortunately faced to have to fight for a riding. We saw it with the opposition at the time, the Liberals, and we saw it with the government, with the Conservatives, where we had two good MPs fighting against each other because they had to fight for one seat. It's part of the democratic process, and I think the key thing is to allow the members to make the choice. At the end of the day, they, like anybody else, and I ran for office, and I know that it's all about membership and nomination meetings. And I think what happens is the people will get it right. If it is Lisa and Jack McLaren fighting for one riding, they're both going to have to sell memberships, and whoever gets the most members wins. I think that's a fair process.
John, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Up next, the Pearson Center's Pursuing Justice Project.